right, 6 minutes after 10 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. Got a special something for you right now. We have the folks from the L. Ron Hubbard East Coast Theater in the studio, and they are going to bring you a radio play. Joni Siegel, I'll go to you as the spokesperson. Good morning, Joni. How you doing?
Good morning. Doing great. Thank you so much for having us again. We love doing this.
Thank you. This is going to be fun. Now, what play are we going to hear today?
Okay, so the story today was written in 1938. It's called Come and Get It. And interestingly enough, while it takes place in the Old West, it has a very distinctive military flair. Mr. Hubbard was in the Navy, so he had a lot of respect for the military and, you know, the attributes of like honor and courage and integrity.
Right.
And those all kind of come up in this story.
They
so
do.
It's a little bit different than just
right.
your classic Western.
All right, nice. Then let's introduce all the cast that we'll hear from today, and we'll begin. Okay?
Absolutely. Well, our fabulous director is also going to take a part today, Kathy Swigert.
Nice to meet
Say
you again,
hi.
Kathy.
Thank you. And then we have Arden Taylor.
Howdy.
Addie, you're in character already, I guess, huh?
Exactly. And then we have Nick Koenig, who's been here before with us.
Hey,
Hello,
Nick.
everyone.
Good to see you.
And kind of new to our group, therefore new to WOCA, is Bob Chetty.
Hello.
Hey, Bob, nice hat.
And we couldn't do a story for you guys without having Joe Martone step in and take a part.
Gang, how you doing? He's in character, too.
Absolutely.
I'm fine.
Absolutely.
A character in character.
Yes.
So, this is going to be fun. So, just a little note, 1938, Ocala didn't even have a radio station.
Oh, wow.
Our
Okay.
first radio station, 1939. I
Okay.
happen to know that little bit of history. So.
Okay, there you go.
So, so the story is older than radio in Ocala.
Exactly.
And it is called, what is it?
Come and Get It.
By L. Ron Hubbard. All right, and my job is to put the music, and here we go.
Okay. Come and Get It by L. Ron Hubbard. When Bill Norton got off the train at Wolf Junction, he had not expected to be met exactly with a brass band. But because he was the new owner of the Bar Inn, he thought there'd at least be a rig in sight. But the only things he could see when the train rattled away to dwindle on the plains were a station agent and a prairie dog. After some thought, Bill decided on the former.
By the way, I was sort of expecting somebody to meet me here. I'm the new owner of the Bar Inn.
The grizzled old agent looked the stranger up and down in a casual, insulting way. He could not miss the screaming stamp of Easterner upon that narrow-brimmed hat, the well-tailored suit, and the polished Oxfords. True, Bill Norton was not bad to look upon, being broad of shoulder, handsome, and young, but there wasn't enough windburn to the stranger's face for the station agent. "Huh," said the agent, shifting his cud from left to right.
Bar Inn? That's what you think.
I said...
I heard you. You think maybe I'm deaf?
Thereupon, he left Norton's trunk where it lay and stalked off into his office where the telegraph was clicking. For a while, Bill hopefully waited for the old man to come back, but hope waned. At last, Bill reached down, upended his trunk, and with a boost, tossed it up on his shoulder. It was a peculiar trunk, having broad bands of color around it so that they crossed on top. Dust in the street of Wolf Junction was deep enough to seep into the top of the Oxfords. The sun was molten brass, intent on soaking the last drop of moisture from the cracked boards of the weary shacks and false fronts. Wolf Junction, Wyoming, was not particularly sparkling in the eyes of young Bill Norton. He dumped the truck on the steps of the Golden Jubilee Hotel, Saloon, Restaurant, Billiard Parlor, and Girls, and looked the town over. Bill sighed. Evidently there wasn't a soul awake at this early hour of 11 o'clock, though a broken lantern and some empty cartridges in the street attested a lively evening just past. Bill wandered inside. A bartender was mechanically polishing glasses as though such action would mysteriously conjure up drinkers.
Beg pardon, but I just got off the train.
The bartender had taken in the hat, the Eastern suit.
Well, get back on again. I ain't stopping you.
Bill cleared his throat nervously.
I thought maybe somebody would be in here to meet me. My name is Norton, and I'm the new owner of the Bar N. I thought...
But the bartender drowned out whatever Bill thought in a gust of laughter. And then went on polishing glasses.
That's the truth. Dan Norton was my father.
The bartender came back and looked carefully into Bill's face and then shook his head.
Hey, dude, come here.
Dude came out from a partitioned office and walked up, obviously the owner of the place.
Say, look, this gent here says he's Dan Norton's boy.
Dude's lazy, insolent black eyes strayed up and down Bill.
Huh,
said Dude. And then he eased his collar and chuckled, going back toward his office.
please, I thought somebody from the Bar N would be in here to meet me. I wired. They knew I was coming. Maybe they knew you, too,
said Dude, vanishing. Bill looked disconsolately at himself in the glass. Personally, he couldn't see anything wrong. Indeed, there was nothing wrong, except his clothes and complexion.
How come?
Said the bartender.
How come what?
You don't look like Dan Norton's boy ought to look. Ain't you never been west before?
No. You see, my father left my mother in the East. I was going to come out after another year or two, but my father's death made it necessary for me to leave right away, to get his affairs in order, of course.
The bartender laughed appreciatively.
Yeah.
What's wrong with that?
Sonny, I'm pretty sure you'll find everything's in order. Red Mike Doherty was appointed executive trustee by the bank.
Bill's nerves couldn't stand much more. He went outside and hefted his trunk to his shoulder and went on up the street to the livery stable. A mossy, bearded oldster dozed there, chair against the door, soaking up sunlight. He opened one eye lazily and looked at Bill. He closed his eye and then, as though just registering what he had seen, came swiftly erect.
Huh. Easterner.
Said the oldster.
Yes. I beg your pardon.
Don't be mine. It wasn't my fault you bought them clothes.
I'm the new owner of the Bar N. I want to rent a horse so I can ride out. Why not?
We ain't got no gentle hosses, and we values them as we has got.
Bill sighed deeply and dropped his trunk. He took out a $5 bill and shoved it under the oldster's nose.
Now do I get a horse?
Reckon so. But don't blame me if he throws ya. And if he does, don't go asking for your $5 back. A deal's a deal.
Norton sighed again, watching the old man saddle up a roan, and Bill Norton sighed once more, recognizing the inevitable. The roan was as sway-backed as a flying ewe brand, as listless as a hound dog, and as bow-legged as the hostler himself.
I'll return him in a couple days.
Return him hell, mister. You bought yourself a hoss, and I throwed in the saddle and bridle.
Bill mounted and put his trunk on the horn. The roan beanie shuffled forward. It was sunset when Beanie finally slouched into the ranch house yard of the Bar N. At last, Bill Norton would have an end to all the galling stares and huffs which met his Eastern garb and Eastern pallor. The place was apparently deserted, most of the men being gone on spring roundup, and so even here was a rousing welcome denied. A lamp was being lighted in a corner room, and so Bill slid off and deposited his trunk on the ground to make his way toward this beacon. He knocked, and a rough growl answered.
Come in. What the hell are you waiting for?
Bill stepped inside. This room was the ranch office, and its walls were heavy with racked rifles. The roll-top desk was colorless with its dust and strewn paper. Scattered about a spittoon on the floor were 6 or so cigar butts. The man at the desk evidently hadn't expected Bill. Red Mike Doherty's eyes shot wide and then narrowed until they vanished beneath his shaggy brows.
And who the hell are you?
Said Red Mike, leaning back and hooking his thumbs into his cartridge belt.
Bill Norton. I suppose you're Red Mike Doherty.
What? What did you come here for?
Why, after I was informed that my father was dead,
What? What's that got to do with it?
Challenged Red Mike in a voice so loud that for an instant Bill thought all the rifles had fired at once.
Why, I'm his heir.
Red Mike laughed, and beside that sound, a rattler's buzz sounded congenial.
So you're his heir?
Chuckled Red Mike, looking at the eastern clothes taken in the absence of gun and sunburn.
Sonny, all the advice I can give you is to hop on a train back to the land of pink tea. Your old man's estate is consisting of second-hand braves of 6 guns, them as they're hanging on the antlers there. Take 'em and welcome.
Red Mike turned back to his tally sheets, dismissing Bill Norton from his mind. Bill took down the worn 6 guns and held them reverently. He unwound the belts from around the holsters and carefully took out one of the Colts. It had seen plenty of service, but it was polished and oiled and apparently in excellent shape. Bill pulled back the hammer and found it very heavy. Suddenly, an explosion shook the room. Red Mike's hat slapped violently against the far wall, and the ricocheting slug went yowling out through the window, taking a pane of glass with it. Red Mike leaped up, purple with wrath.
What the hell are you doing? Cheese and crackers, and you don't know nothing about guns? Leave them for the men to handle.
Wrathfully, he advanced upon Bill, and Bill, looking very apologetic, backed out of the door.
Go grab a rattler and get the hell out of here before someone makes budget bait out of you.
Bill looked nervous.
I can't very well do that. You see, I haven't got any money left. I bought a horse and...
He was shocked at the changeable moods of this Red Mike Doherty. The man had taken one look at Beanie and was now roaring with laughter.
They've been trying to sell that horse for a year, to my knowledge. Sonny, did you have a nurse? Well, damn it all. Sonny, did you lose your nurse along the way?
I can't leave this place,
said Bill, reverting to the subject with haste.
He won't carry me much further, and I haven't had anything to eat all day.
Red Mike jerked his thumb toward the cook shack.
Maybe you can find some old cold beans there if you look, and there's some blankets in the bunkhouse. Tomorrow morning, when this crow-bait can walk, you hightail it back to Wolf Junction and clear out.
But I told you, I couldn't buy a railroad ticket,
said Bill. He looked forlornly at Red Mike.
Couldn't you maybe give me a job here?
A job? You? What the hell do you think you could do around a ranch?
Why, nothing, I guess. But you can't let me starve like this. Surely there's some kind of a job. I could tally.
What do you know about tallying?
I read about it in a book.
Huh?
Said Red Mike, tired of laughing by now.
Sonny, I ain't been iron. I got a heart. They need a second-string belly robber.
A what?
Second cook at Camp 3. You can take it in the morning. If you don't know how to peel spuds, Greasy Gates, he'll learn you.
Bill, dazed as one who has fallen a great distance, stumbled back to his horse and sorrowfully led the animal through the dusk toward the corrals.
Get your trunk,
said Red Mike, pushing it over with his boot.
Huh? Leave it to that damn dude to pretty up his war box. Yellow and green and orange stripes? Aren't there no end to your damn foolishness?
Bill shouldered the trunk and trudged away. Red Mike watched him go with narrow eyes and then shrugged to turn back to his office and the tally sheets. Bill put the trunk in the bunkhouse and then started toward the cook shack. The ranch was as quiet as death, and it weighed heavily upon his spirits. He struck a light to a lantern and looked into a pot which sat upon a greasy table. Bill made a face. Those beans had been sitting there for a week at least, and the dried brown sludge was almost more than his stomach could stand. However, he was hungry, and he stirred up the mess, added some water, and then got some sticks and lighted the fire to warm his supper. It was a very thoughtful meal with long pauses in between mouthfuls. But it was also a fruitful meal, since he had an idea by the time he had finished it. He went for a walk around the building, stumbling over the unfamiliar ground since he did not carry the lantern. After considerable search, he found the ranch cemetery. It was fenced in on a bare knoll, and not one blade of grass was there to soften the hard, cracked earth. Cautiously, he struck a match or two and looked at the rough boards with which some of the graves were marked. At last, he located his father's grave. He stood beside it for some time, lost in the gloom of the evening. Finally, he shook off the dark mood and trudged back to the buildings to search for a shovel. For the next hour, he carefully dug into the flinty soil, not knowing how deep the body would be. But men had had other things to do the day they had buried Dan Norton, and the grave was shallow. It was not a pleasant task, and the original state of the beans did not help. But despite all that, Bill persevered, uncovering the whole of the corpse with his hands, and then, kneeling in the grave, made a careful examination. He had used up 4 matches when he at last found a bullet wound. It was in the back of the head. There was another between the shoulder blades and a third in the arm. Bill raised the arm slowly until it extended above the head. Not until then did his finger slide into the wound. It took considerable courage with his sensitive stomach to put the body back in order again. But when he had finished, there was little to show that the corpse had been disinterred. Bill walked slowly back to the bunkhouse. He dropped the shovel in the corner and then lighted the lamp on the table. By its light, he reread the telegram he had received from the banker of Wolf Junction, Brad McNeil.
William Norton, 21 East 8th Street, New York City. Your father killed in accident by wild horse. Brad McNeil.
Bill put the telegram away and rolled into the lowest bunk to lie staring for hours out through the doorway at the bright western stars. The crew at Camp 3 was incredulous, and with one glimpse of Beanie and Ryder, all Dawn grouches were gone. But outside of a few stifled snorts, no real noise was made, since men didn't laugh around Red Mike Doherty, lest he suddenly get it into his head that he was the target, which he never could be. Red Mike pulled up before the chuck wagon where Greasy Gates was slamming breakfast together with an air which indicated that every chunk of sow belly had personally insulted him an instant before. He got that way whenever he had to peel his own spuds.
Greasy, here's something for you to make into a helper.
Gates looked up almost with joy and then scowled. But nobody ever found any fault with Red Mike's ideas. Nobody, not ever. Bill got down and pulled the battered saddle off Beanie and sent the aged horse out toward the remuda with a slap. Dropping the saddle, Bill took off his coat and laid it aside. Rolling up his sleeves, he approached the fire. Everybody was silent until Red Mike rode out toward the herd, and then, appreciatively, the crew gathered round. Greasy looked Bill up and down with disgust. Bill, in his turn, examined the cook. Greasy Gates had a cleaver in one hand, an unlighted cigar in his mouth, and a derby hat on the side of his bullet head. About him was girded a flour sack black with abuse.
I hear tell that Red Mike left a helper around here, but I don't see nothing. Do you boys?
Carefully, the crew looked all around. even under the wagon, and then came back shaking their heads.
Nothing at all, Greasy.
Bill turned red and said nothing, but he did see that the breakfast was starting to go up in smoke, and he made a move to pull the frying pan off the fire. With one hard kick, Greasy sent the pan soaring and almost broke Bill's wrist.
If I see something that needs to be done, I'm the gent that's gonna do the saying that it's got to be done. Have you got that straight, pretty boy?
Bill nursed his wrist.
Now go get that pan and put it back where you found it.
Bill didn't move. Greasy, cleaver gripped resolutely and cigar working in his mouth, advanced to tower over Bill.
You hard at hearing, pretty boy?
Bill said nothing. He retrieved the pan, and just as suddenly the punchers lost interest in him. They got their pans and got their breakfast, and somehow Bill got through his first half hour of being a second cook. When breakfast was done, the punchers threw their pans into a pile beside the fire, eyeing the newcomer covertly to see what he would do. And Bill picked up the pans and stacked them neatly, looking around for a bucket in which to carry water up from a spring below the wagon. And again the punchers lost interest to go their several ways. Greasy Gates, when they were alone in camp, sat down on a rock and crossed his arms in front of him, cleaver in full view.
As soon as you get them dishes washed, start in on the pans. And as soon as you got them pans shining, and I mean shining, you can start in peeling spuds. And as soon as you get them peeled, you can get some chips for the fire. And as soon as you get them, you can fill up the drinking barrel. And then we'll get to work.
Bill looked sideways at Greasy Gates now and then as he worked, but the cook was a colossus among cooks, and though Bill hadn't been shortchanged on height, the difference was too great. Besides, he had to keep this job. When the punchers rolled into the Sugans that night to heave a boot or two at Bill because he made so much noise washing the supper dishes, Bill was ready to quit. His arms ached. His hands, unaccustomed to such things, were red and raw. When he finally crawled into bed, Bill was sound asleep. But not for long, or so it seemed to him. 2 hours before the sun was up, Bill was busy building the breakfast fire. He found out that 2 breakfasts had to be served, one to the riders going out and one to the night riders coming in. And so he toiled and wondered how long he could keep it up without dropping in his tracks. But he did keep it up. Greasy Gates saw to that. With threat and curse, Greasy Gates ran the show from the shade of the chuck wagon. Throughout a hot day, Bill sweated outwardly and boiled inwardly, and again, when night came, he died. But Greasy Gates resurrected him with a kick, and life went on. For 5 long days, Bill hung between life and death. He was too weary to think. His hands mechanically did Greasy Gates' bidding, and that was the end of it. By the time 10 toilsome days had sped, he had a whole hour to himself every afternoon. And as the days progressed, he found a friend. Somewhere in his wanderings, Greasy Gates had come by a black and tan pup. And because he saw the possibilities of not having to clean up the ground around the fire after gaining such a possession, he kept the dog with him. But Tango did not lead a very happy life. The air about him was always too eternally full of frying pans and boots and blue scorchers. A mysterious thing had begun to happen shortly after Bill's advent upon the bar inn. Tango's flanks filled out. Nobody remarked it, but Tango's own temper had begun to smooth down. He never so much as offered to show his teeth except, and here was the key, except when somebody came too close to Bill's Sugan or strove to sit down on Bill's gaily colored trunk. The rescued hour from the day went to Tango, and because nobody had ever thought the pup had brains except Bill, Tango prospered. Bill avoided such obvious things as asking for food and such indignities as sitting up. The training went into a very strange byroad. Out in the brush, in his hour of rest, Bill practiced a draw. And Tango practiced too. Tango, on command, would leap for the wrist drawing the gun. Further, Tango would leap on a back at Bill's order. Further, any specified object, such as a coat or a hat or a boot, would be fetched by Tango with a slyness rivaled only by a Mexican bandit. The men had grown used to Bill's smudged presence. He no longer offered any interest, and besides, the work had to go on apace in this out-of-season roundup. All in all, it appeared that Bill Norton was going to sit by in perfect contentment and let everything of violence go by the boards. One afternoon, the camp received a visitor due to the fact that Red Mike was making Camp 3 his headquarters for the moment. Bill had his arms up to the elbow in a stack of greasy pans and was working furiously to retrieve a little more time for Tango's lessons and his own relief. But when he saw the stranger, Bill slowed up. The man had the unmistakable stamp of a banker upon him. His broadcloth frock coat reached down to the top of his boots. A chain with a wolf's tooth in the middle stretched across his ample and embroidered vest. A bulge under the shoulders showed the position of a shotgun. The man's face was puffy with easy living, and his voice was husky with too many expensive cigars. This, without doubt, was Brad McNeil. Red Mike rode in as the banker rode up.
Howdy, Brad.
How's it coming, Doherty?
Well, as can be expected. A lot of stock missing, though, according to these tally sheets.
Brad McNeil climbed cumbrously down and seated himself on his saddle. The day was warm and he was perspiring amply. He mopped his brow and fanned his coat back and forth. Finally, he yielded to an impulse and removed the dark garment, laying it behind him on a box of dried apples. It jingled when he did that. He loosened up his vest.
So, some stock's missing, huh? Maybe old Norton was too damned optimistic when it came to me for money.
Yeah,
said Red Mike, squatting on his heels and nursing the chill of a cup of water between his palms.
looks that way.
When will you be finished?
Tomorrow afternoon should do the trick.
Good.
As they talked, Bill was all ears. Finally, he made a motion to Tango, who laid sprawled under the chuck wagon. Tango came up with wagging tail, and Bill bent toward his ear for an instant. Tango sobered immediately. Very slyly, after the habit of one versed in the art of thieving sow-belly, Tango crept up in back of McNeil, taking the coat in his teeth and quietly towing it back to Bill. It took Bill but an instant to retrieve the jingling keys, and then he made another motion to Tango. The dog dragged the coat back and left it beside the apple box. Bill grinned a little to himself. He had originally intended to use that trick for a few practical jokes, but fate had its own design. McNeil and Doherty went on talking all unawares, and at last, as McNeil got up to go, Bill stood back from the pans.
You're Mr. McNeil, aren't you?
Who's this?
Old man Norton's boy.
What's he doing here?
I got a soft heart at once in a while, you know, and when he found out he didn't have any rights to the bar end, he couldn't go back, so I came to his job so he could eat.
Someday, I would like to check over the records, Mr. McNeil. That is, if you don't mind.
Certainly, my boy, certainly. I hardly expected you to come west. You were in a college someplace, weren't you?
Yes.
I heard Norton say so. Too bad about the old man, son.
Wasn't it?
McNeil was only slightly annoyed to find that his coat had fallen off the apple box. He tossed it over his arm and then mounted.
Be seeing you, Doherty.
So long.
The two went away from the chuck wagon in their different directions.
What the hell are you doing?
Roared Greasy Gates, waking up in astonishment to see that Bill was idle. Bill swiftly bent over the pans again, and to their music, Greasy Gates went softly back to sleep, dirty face pillowed on soiled arms. Tango, with the spirit of a pirate, stole his hat and dropped it in the ashes, turning back to Bill with wagging tail and lolling tongue. Bill grinned back, but he was very much preoccupied. He had not finished until all the camp was snoring, and strangely he was not tired this night. He stood by the remnants of the fire and stared out across the bluish plain to the ragged indigo hills, above which glowed the tidings of the moon. Carefully then he trod over the sleeping figures and made his way to the Sugan, where slept Red Mike, shaggy head pillowed on his saddle, white sombrero lying to one side. He took the hat and pulled the neckerchief from inside it, and then, wrapping stealthy fingers about a coiled riata, Bill slipped toward the rope corral where the top-string mounts rested. The big sorrel, which Mike rode, was close at hand, and Bill did not have to try his luck with a throw. The sorrel reared once or twice, not liking to work at night, but finally Bill got the saddle in place and bit between the unwilling teeth. Silently, he led the bronc away from the chuck wagon. Tango came up whimpering a little at this breach of routine.
Go back. I'll be with you shortly.
Tango, not liking it at all, went back, looking at his departing friend over his shoulder. As soon as Bill was outside the hearing radius from camp, the quirt popped, and the startled sorrel lunged forward, breaking into a ragged gallop. Bill settled him down. It was a strange seat that he rode, heels down and in, legs straight, back like a ramrod. The wind was hard and exhilarating against his lean face, and the prairie sped beneath the spurning hoofs. Startled coyotes leaped aside from the trail. An owl whooshed skyward from its rabbit dinner. The ground rose and fell in sudden swoops, but level and ravine were all alike to Bill, and the quirt cracked again and again. Finally, far off sparkled the lights of Wolf Junction. A train left a plume of sparks against the sable sky, and the whistle came, sweetened by the distance. Bill eyed the long series of yellow squares as they sped across the plain and wondered for a moment if it would not be better sense to climb aboard than to stay here and run the chance of getting a gut full of lead. When he had reached the end of the single street, the train was gone, and Wolf Junction had settled back to Faro and Red Eye. Bill tied the sorrel behind a store and went forward on muted feet, well appreciating the target he made in that white sombrero. He came to the back of the bank and found a door. His hand shook a little as he searched out the right key. It seemed to him as though he was beating upon an alarm gong instead of rattling keys. At last, he found the one which fit, and with a glance about him, stepped gingerly into the bank. A streak of moonlight spread itself like a gauze curtain over the file cabinets. Bill's fingers were swift as he rumpled the papers, but he found nothing under the name of Norton. He turned to the locked roll-top desk of the president. A key fitted at last, and he opened the drawers to comb through the files there. Finally, he found a paper which bore the name Norton. Pocketing this, he went to the vault. It was old, built in the days when cattle had first come to Wyoming, and a combination lock was a stranger to it. The biggest key fitted here, and the door loosed a dismal dirge as Bill swung it back. A lighted match showed him the filing case inside, and it was here that he found the important documents relating to the Bar Inn. Slowly he closed the door, and then, cat-footed, went back to the entrance. Suddenly, a light was unmasked and its glare struck at him, but almost before that bullseye was focused, Bill drew and fired. With a crash and a shout of pain, the darkness came back. A bellowing voice roared.
Stand where you are!
Bill answered with lead. The men behind the cages dropped hastily out of sight, only to bop up an instant later to behold an empty doorway. McNeil yanked his grazed watchman to his feet.
Get up, you fool! That was a hell of a time to go to sleep.
What about you?
I said he'd get here as soon as I found my keys was missing, and I was right.
Ain't you gonna follow him?
McNeil moved ponderously to the door and stared into the moonlit plain.
There's only one way to find him in that. We'll head for Camp 3. Get Tom and some of the boys. We'll show that fool a thing or two.
It was dawn, and it looked just like any other dawn to Camp 3, which was all they knew about it. The fire was blazing and a stew was bubbling, and the coffee was sending out its aroma in tantalizing veils. And Greasy Gates sat up in his bunk in some astonishment at the fact that he had not been called. Bill, strangely cheerful, banged violently upon a frying pan with a potato masher and yelled,
Come and get it before I throw it out!
Night riders, hearing the summons slightly ahead of time, came galloping in. Tango, awaking to discover to his vast pleasure that Bill had come back after all, waltzed happily in toward the fire, wagging his greeting.
Come on, your Annies! Daylight's burning!
The night riders dismounted, grinning at so much glee emanating from a usually obliterative second cook. Greasy Gates rolled out of his Sugan, not quite certain whether he was pleased or not. A stew for breakfast did not seem the usual thing, and besides, there was something strange about that stew. Sow belly and beans made up the diet, but the aroma told a different story.
What you got there?
Said a night rider, sniffing pleasurably.
I ran down, I snared a couple of jackrabbits last night. I thought maybe you'd like a change.
Several of the men were up and pulling on their boots. This was all very odd to them to see Greasy Gates still in bed and to smell that stew.
Who the hell's cook around here?
Roared Greasy Gates, grabbing the first thing which came to hand, a boot, and getting ready to lay about him.
Lay off,
said the night rider.
I never seen you do nothing for us but cook sow belly.
Others agreed, and Greasy Gates, promising himself satisfaction when the camp was deserted, made a show of calming down. Meantime, plates were being piled up with the rabbit and potato stew, and it did Greasy Gates no good whatever to hear the men praise the quality of both stew and coffee.
Guess he took your old socks out the pot.
Greasy Gates merely glared. Red Mike came back from the rope corral.
Said something's funny around here. Feathers, winds, rain. He been rude.
Everybody was very busy eating, and Red Mike sat down on a box and took his portion, staring before him in a puzzled way, occasionally turning to look back toward the rope corral. Uneasily, Bill was handing out more stew and coffee. A rider glanced up and then stared intently toward the north.
Somebody coming.
Hell, a lot of somebodies, if you ask me. Wonder what the rush's all about.
Bill unobtrusively vanished around the end of the chuck wagon, pulling his father's guns from under the canvas cover and buckling them on. Brad McNeil wasted no time. He expected a fight, and when he didn't instantly get it, he was astonished. He pulled in at the head of his half-dozen men and glared at Red Mike.
What's the idea?
Red Mike read fight in the tone. He hitched at his gun to make sure it was loose in its holster and then advanced a few paces.
I don't get you, McNeil.
Sure, put on a bluff about it. I come for them papers you stole last night in Wolf Junction. Get 'em and get 'em fast. Keep 'em covered, boys.
Plates in hand, the Camp 3 crew was in no position for war. Stupidly, they stared at the leveled Winchester muzzles.
I don't know what you talking about. What papers?
You know damned well what papers. I'm doing business my own way, without any interference from you. In case you ain't heard, bank robbing is a serious business. Don't think your horse wasn't seen, and don't tell me I can't recognize you when I see you. Go on, get those papers or somebody's gonna get hurt.
Wait a minute, McNeil. If you're so damn sure I got 'em, search the camp. But damn it, if I can figure out what papers...
The bar and papers, you fool! Lefty, go through this place and don't quit till we got what we want.
Red Mike watched the search begin. Sugans and flour and bridles flew to the right and left while two men pawed over the dunnage.
McNeil, maybe you tipped your hand. What's there about the bar end that I don't know?
The mortgage papers. I need 'em to foreclose and you know it. And as long as I can't foreclose, you're in charge here. And what was that you said about cattle disappearing?
Red Mike's hard face froze.
I've been called a lot of things.
Cover 'em.
But nobody ever had the guts before to call me a rustler. Step down here, give me an even break. Or I'll pick you off first chance I meet you on the trail.
All the baggage except the violently painted trunk had been searched, and now that came to light. Lefty pried off the lock and yanked up the lid. The Camp 3 men, staring at Lefty's handiwork, grew somewhat round-eyed.
Here's what you want, Brad.
Said Lefty, pulling forth the documents and extending them.
Just keep holding them right there.
Said a soft voice on top of the chuck wagon. All eyes jerked aloft to behold Bill behind 2 leveled Colts.
Now hand those papers to Red Mike Doherty. He'll be interested to find out he was working for a crook.
Get him! He can't shoot!
A Winchester banged, and in the same explosion, the McNeil rider flew up his arms and lurched back into the dirt. McNeil wasted no time. He snatched at his shotgun. The Colts blazed. McNeil's hand was spattered red, and the shotgun leaped back and down. Nobody there could believe such shooting from an Easterner, but prudence dictated that the McNeil riders dropped their rifles slowly to earth.
Take those papers, Doherty.
Red Mike took them. He opened them up and with squinted eyes examined them.
Why? This isn't old Doherty's will. Wait, it is. I thought he didn't have none. McNeil? And look here. Here's a receipt deed to the Wolf Junction First National for the Bar and Mountain Pastures. It's payment in full for all loans. And signed by McNeil. Hell, that's only a small chunk. Look here, McNeil. Is this deed the straight goods?
Talk up.
Said Bill from on top of the wagon. McNeil stared at the 2 motionless Colts and nodded dismally.
Which means that you didn't have no claim to foreclose on the bar end. You stole those papers back after old Norton was shot from behind. You shot Norton from behind?
No! Lefty?
Lefty leaped for the banker's throat, but the night riders tripped him and held him down.
Some of you boys escort McNeil into Wolf Junction and give him to the sheriff. I'll be in to make the complaint this afternoon. And if the rest of you rannies have finished breakfast, you better be getting to work.
He climbed down off the chuck wagon to hit earth beside Red Mike. McNeil was still staring in stupid disbelief at the Easterner. Red Mike looked at the trunk and saw a pair of Wellington boots.
I thought you said you went to college in the East, Mr. Norton.
But Bill was already walking away. Greasy Gates did not realize that he was Bill's goal until it was too late. And then an earthquake rose up and hit Greasy Gates in the face. Bill picked the cook up again and gave him an expert wrestling heave to land him in a pile of pots. It was done so effortlessly that it seemed impossible the Greasy Gates could emerge from the ruins so bloody. Bill was advancing very coldly, but Greasy Gates dropped to his knees.
Please.
Moaned Greasy Gates, dazed and shaken.
Get busy on those pots.
Said Bill, walking back to Red Mike, and Greasy Gates got busy. The men were just gathering to take McNeil away, having been delayed by Bill's sideshow. But before he let himself be led from there, McNeil had a question.
Mr. Norton, I thought you said you went to a college.
You said that. And I did. Of a sort.
He started putting things back into his trunk. A saber, a pair of cavalry boots, and a holstered single-action army pistol. Then he closed down the lid, ornate with its regimental striping.
The name of the place was West Point.
Very good. Oh my gosh, that was so good, Joni. Thank you.
Enjoyed it?
That was fun. Thank you all. That was an amazing thing. We recorded it, so if you want to hear it again, you can watch it. It's I don't have the best camera work going on, but very good.
But it's on your website, right?
Yeah. How many stories did L. Ron Hubbard write?
Oh, he wrote well over 150.
Is that right? Wow.
Yeah.
And how many of them are made into plays? Did somebody else put them into play form, or did he do that?
Galaxy Press out in Los Angeles kind of redoes them and puts them in the format with all of the sound effect cues and kind of rewrites them so that the dialogue is obvious. And I think there's probably a good 50 to 70 that have been, reworked in order for us to do them as shows.
We'll take a little break, and we'll be right back, and then we can maybe get some mini interviews in with everybody who just participated. We'll be right back.
Absolutely.
Hey, folks, the deals are so good this week at Bob Wine's Camellia Gardens, they've taken a full-page ad to tell you about them. Check it out and you'll see specials like these. A huge selection of blooming hanging baskets. You buy one, you get a second one at half price. Lots of easy care drift roses, many different colors, priced to sell at just $17.99. Flowering vines, more selection than you can imagine. Buy one, get one for half price. And check out that mix or match sale on a whole host of your favorite spring plants. Regular price of $8.99, but yours for as low as $3.49 when you buy 12 or more. Big full-page ad in the paper or go to bobwinescamelliagardens.net. They're on Southeast 38th Street in Ocala, daily till 4:30, Saturdays till 3, in the same blooming place since 1952.
Howdy folks, RL here for Dairy Queen Silver Springs. We want to thank Marion County for 45 years of loyalty. We love this wonderful community, so come on down to Dairy Queen Silver Springs and get some of our great food and ice cream. We have a number of great meal deals that include dessert at a better price than anyone in the industry. Our products are made fresh to order just for you. Dairy Queen Silver Springs, where we always treat you like kings and queens.
Hi, this is Will.
And this is Wendy of Dex Imaging in Gainesville and Ocala. You know, we live and work in this community just like you, and we wanted to personally invite you to call us with any questions or concerns about your copiers or printers.
Like, how can I save money on my toner? That stuff's expensive.
In most cases, a complimentary workflow analysis has shown we can save your business 20 to 30% on printing cost.
Have you been kicking around the idea of going paperless? Are you considering a document management solution? Maybe you just want to ask some questions, but don't want to be bombarded by aggressive salespeople.
Give us a call. We'll be happy to answer your questions and show you how you can save money with our award-winning copiers and printers and our amazing service team.
Who, in case you didn't know, will be there in 4 hours or less to service your machine guaranteed, and we have a 97% first-time fix rate. Check us out at deximaging.com or give us a call.
In Ocala, dial 352-433-4090. That's 433-4090.
Are you an animal lover concerned about wild black bears and animals born in captivity but are unable to be released into the wild? Forest Animal Rescue is here in Marion County, dedicated to helping abused or abandoned animals, soon to be the home of the rare red panda. You can be a vital part of this effort. Your contribution to the Forest Animal Rescue will help the sanctuary expand and rescue more animals. Will you help? Visit www.forestanimalrescue.org.
All right, about 5 minutes before 11 o'clock. In just a little while, we will have Rustin Lovewell on the phone with us. And here's, I think, an unplanned coincidence. Rustin is actually the winner of the L. Ron Hubbard Writers and Illustrators of the Future Award, Volume 35. He was one of the winners of that contest that we've told you about many times. One of the legacies of L. Ron Hubbard is the fact that he has created this contest so that writers can perhaps have a little sample or maybe a big sample of what L. Ron Hubbard himself was able to experience in his lifetime as a successful author. It's not easy sometimes for authors to get noticed. And one of the things we learned from speaking to some of the folks out there is, and when I say out there, they're all over the country, really. But John Goodwin in the West Coast, right? He always calls us. And is that if you send in a story and it's not maybe quite up to snuff, they will actually coach you and work with you so that
they will.
Maybe the next time you enter, you'll be able to win.
They will. It's true because my son applied one time and they did. He got word back. But yeah, I mean, Mr. Hubbard, knowing it was hard to get published, that's why he started this contest for the writers and illustrators. And it's huge. And really, anybody listening, if you like to write and you write short stories, should check it out. Writersofthefuture.com, I think.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because you can apply. apply. And yeah.
Yeah, it is a really great career launcher. We're still waiting for somebody from
Yes.
Ocala to win one, but
Okay.
but it hasn't happened. I know we've had some who entered it. We've had people call us and
So
said,
listeners here in Ocala, you need
Yeah.
to apply. One of the winners.
and it's free, by the way. It costs nothing at all.
Exactly.
Yeah.
One of the winners actually lives in the Villages.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Have we met him, Robin?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So,
Roy, what? Oh, Roy. Roy of the Villages.
Don't put people on the spot.
his name is
sorry.
Roy? His name is Roy?
Huh? His name is Roy.
Right,
Yeah.
okay.
Tell you what.
Uh,
Hey, Larry.
yeah.
You get kudos for doing all the sound effects back there.
Yeah, yay, Larry.
Thank
you and
you.
Robin. You and Robin. I watched. I looked up from the script every once in a while. There's Robin pointing to the script. And you're over there with the dials and the presses and all.
So let's talk to some Bob Chetty.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, Bob, how you doing, Bob? Where are you from?
I'm from Sacramento, California.
Oh, wow. When did you move to Florida?
Oh, a long time ago, about 1986.
Oh, okay. And have you always been an actor?
No, I actually work in the sound field. I do music production.
Is that right? Wow.
Yeah.
And what kind of music? Or does that not matter when you're in the production side of it?
Well, I do a lot of work with the jazz musician Chick Corea.
Oh, my gosh.
He just became our friend.
Wow, there's a name for you. Well, we know that name. Well, that is exciting.
Yeah, it's
wow,
great.
very good. How's Chick doing?
Oh, he's doing great. he's loving. He also enjoys Florida. He's here a lot, and he's having a good time and working on some projects. He has some exciting things coming up. He's 76 years young, and he's just going full.
Oh, that is awesome.
ahead.
Wow, hidden things we didn't know.
Yeah.
Nick Koenig? Am I
Yep.
saying your name right, Nick? How are you doing?
Pretty good, and you?
You got the good looks of an actor. Are you getting into acting in film and in TV?
That's definitely the plan, yeah.
Yeah?
I personally enjoy theater just because you have the live audience and there's something about that live connection. But I do think, film is a lot of fun too, so I kind of plan to go into both areas.
So we were mentioning the feedback that the L. Ron Hubbard group, Galaxy Press, gives to the writers. Do you get that same kind of feedback from an acting perspective?
Not necessarily in the
from
same
Kathy?
way.
From Kathy?
I mean, obviously I have my director, my producer here that talk to me about a lot of things, but most of the feedback actually comes from the audience, from people coming up and talking to me after the shows and stuff like that. So.
Oh, really? And is it okay if somebody gives you a constructive suggestion?
Yeah.
Not that I have any, but because you guys sounded awesome to me. But
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Obviously, if someone comes up and has some mean opinion or something like that, that's a wholly different thing.
Sure.
Often, I actually learn the most from people who came up. It's like, I like the way that you did this, but I had an idea that you could try it this and this way, and I look at it that way then. And
that's nice that they do it that way. Where are you from?
Well, I was born in Clearwater, Florida, but my parents are actually German, so I kind of have that dual citizenship. And
Oh, wow.
we moved here when I was very young, so
Do you speak German?
I do.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I can say I love you. Ich liebe dich.
Why do you want to say that to him?
I can also say, do you have fleas? Hast du Flöhe?
No, I don't.
I learned those two from my grandmother.
Oh, good.
She would talk to her
Excellent.
dog. I love you. Do you
She
have
wanted
fleas?
to make sure you didn't have fleas. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Arden Taylor.
Yes, sir.
You're a good-looking guy too. How you doing?
Thank you very much. I'm doing well.
Where are you from?
Clearwater, Florida.
Is that a natural Southern accent? Natural?
No, I just put it on and off, like changing clothes.
Oh, okay.
You can do an Australian accent. Do your Australian accent.
Yeah, well, it's sort of a subtle thing. You can't quite tell that I have it all the time.
That's excellent.
We're actually going to a restaurant later. I think I'm going to try it out there when I order.
That is very good. Yeah. Well, in the beginning of interviewing people, Robert and I couldn't distinguish between British and Australian. Now we know because we speak to so many people now. So you did really good.
Thank you.
And acting, is it a career for you? Is it a hobby? What is?
It's a hobby and an interest. If it evolves into a career, it's more than welcome. But I'll put a lot of hard work into it. But it's not where I'm going for. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you guys are outstanding. Kathy, we've met you before.
Yes.
Where were you born?
I was born in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. My father was going to go to the University of Alabama. He became an aeronautical engineer. My mama says I started talking when I was 9 months old, and I haven't shut up since.
I don't remember that accent. Is that real?
Maybe at one time
that
it
you?
was.
Oh my God, I wasn't sure. I mean, you're also good at it,
And Kathy's a brand new grandma.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
Welcome to the
Thank
club.
you.
Oh, yeah.
My daughter, about 4 weeks ago, had a little baby boy. She had a 6-year. She has a 6-year-old daughter, so I have that. But it just kind of starts all over again.
Oh, really?
I have a boy.
Yeah, Robin is brand new to that club too.
Nothing
So
like being a
fun.
grandparent. It's so much fun.
I know. Totally.
Johnny, where'd you grow up?
My dad was in the Air Force.
In the Air Force, so that means?
All over, because I was born in Fort Worth, Texas, but then when I was 2, he was transferred to England, so it was like, I've lived in Florida longest now.
Have you visited the Scientology building down in downtown Ocala? Have you visited those people?
Yes. Yeah. I think we went the last time we were here.
They always offer me water whenever they say I think I look thirsty.
You look dehydrated.
You look thirsty there, Larry. Okay, good. All right.
You guys do the same thing every time we come in. I think it's part and parcel.
You know, if you're in Florida, you need water. What can I say?
We walk past their building and say, "Excuse me, would you like some water?" It's like, every time I walk past, you guys offer me water.
I like it.
And Joe, where'd you grow up? They include
everybody
the last
knows I'm
actor
from Connecticut.
Yeah.
We're out of time.
We are? Mm-hmm. What are you, producing a show now?
No, I'm just watching from the sidelines.
So thank you all for doing this.
Well,
and
thank you.
It's
Thanks
a
for
lot
having us.
A lot
You're
of fun, and it's archived now forever, so you'll be able to replay it. The camera work, forget that. Just listen to the audio.
We're going to come back with a mystery at sea.
Oh, a mystery at sea.
Yes, we
Oh
are.
my gosh, that sounds like some good sound effects. All right, we will take a little break and we'll be right back. This is The Source, WOCA.
Hey, folks, the deals are so good this week at Bob Wine's Camellia Gardens, they've taken a full-page ad to tell you about them. Check it out and you'll see specials like these. A huge selection of